Hi, it's Cheryl with Bayer's Pampered Stampers. Let's take a look at this foiled background technique. We're using for this the WOW Opaque Bright White Ultra High Embossing Powder that gives us this funky white stuff that you see in the stripes. I'm also using some foil from Scrapbook Adhesives. These are metallic foil transfer sheets. They come in assortments. This is the pastel colors assortment. Melissa has several other options in the shop. I like them because they're essentially 6x6 sheets and you get a variety of colors in the same package. So it's kind of nice. You're not getting that huge quantity of foil, but more smaller, usable, multicolor packages. So those are the two things we're going to use, along with some score tape. Score tape is not essential. What you need is a double-sided tape that's heat resistant. So make sure whatever you're using is heat resistant. Otherwise, when you apply the heat to the embossing powder, it's just going to curl up and you're going to lose your work. So that's not what you want there. To get the two widths of stripes, obviously, I need the 1/4 and the 1/2 inch. You can use whatever widths you have on hand, wider, whatever you like. I don't think there's narrower than an 1/8 inch. So let's talk about how we set up this card. We're going to start with putting the stripes on with the score tape. To do that, I find it easiest to use some sort of a grid, and I'm using my Make Art board for this. You can use your glass mat, you can use your paper trimmer, whatever has a grid that will help you to put the tape on, let's say, more consistently and straight. So I want to use the straight lines here to line up my tape. I'm not going into the top, so I can put magnets all over the top and hold my paper in place. And just one, I might put that at the bottom later. I'm going to start with my narrowest score tape, and I'm just going to grab a piece that's more than long enough and put it on the first diagonal. And the first time that I'm doing this, I'm going to adjust this to get the angle that I want on it. So I want to use my straight lines here to measure, first of all, that my score tape is going on straight, and then secondly, that I'm getting it at fairly regular intervals. You can eyeball it if you want. I'm just doing it this way. And so I'm going to lay it along here, and my first piece is placed. Obviously, I grabbed way more score tape than I needed for that piece because I'm notorious for grabbing too little. Probably see that in just a minute. Now, when I go to place the second piece, again, I'm using these lines to help me place it at a fairly regular interval between place it straight and all of those things. So you're just going to continue your score tape up the line until you end up with something like this. You're going to have 6 strips on. Now, obviously for this one, my stripes were fairly wide apart. This one, they're much, much closer. Either one works. It's just whatever you like. So rather than dwelling on this, that's essentially the technique you're going to use until you have the number of stripes on there that you want. And then you're going to move on to the second step. So here we've got one that's done. You can see with the white part, we're working with the wider stripes. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the score tape on the wide stripes only to expose that adhesive. Then I'm going to grab my embossing powder. This is not a dump and go project. This is one of those where you're going to pinch up a little bit and you're going to place a little bit of the powder along the stripes. So kind of like that. I can place a little more or a little less. It's sort of all up to you how you want to do this. You don't want them full, you want space. So I think I'm a little sparse on my top stripe. Just going to add just a little bit more there, and I'm done with embossing powder. Now the next thing I want to do is to grab my foil. And I picked green for this just because it's easier to not confuse it with the embossing powders. If I pick a color it doesn't come in. So I'm just going to lay that along the tape and press it into place. And I've got to press fairly hard because I'm pressing around where that embossing powder is, trying to get that foil to adhere. So remember, I've got 3 wide stripes that I'm trying to get the powder on. That's my first attempt. I'm going to lift up now, and I'm going to see my first one's not terrible. The ones below it need a little work as well, but I'm going to go back. If you go back over the top, as long as there's sticky adhesive on there, it's going to pick up more of this metallic foil. And so what I'm trying to do is fill in the gaps. And white powder, white paper, it is a little hard to judge where there's powder and it's fully covered versus where it needs a little more foil. So you just have to use your best judgment on that. To be honest, I should have cut this strip of foil down a little bit. Would have made it a little bit easier to use here as opposed to using the full piece. But well, sometimes I do things the hard way because I kind of wanted the length for the long stripe, but it wasn't well thought out. But you can see now this one's covered fairly well. I have a little spot right there. And then I'm going to go down to my lower. And again, just try and get that foil onto the adhesive. You're working around that powder that's not yet set, so you've got the lumpy bumps and that sort of thing. But that's okay, we're going to work around those. And once we've kind of got foil and everything where we want it to be, I'm going to grab a soft brush here, and I'm just going to brush off any excess embossing powder because I don't want that on the card. I really want it off. By now it's pretty well stuck to that adhesive strip as well. And now it's time to heat. We're going to melt that powder. I may heat from the bottom first, and I apologize for the noise. This is a pretty fast gun, so it won't take long to melt. Once I've started the heat process, I can go back to the top and finish melting that powder quickly. And it's a little hard to see on camera, but I think it's pretty well, that powder is pretty well melted. And so we've got the foiled and powdered melted parts here. Now the last thing we're going to do to finish this look is we're going to pull and expose these skinny stripes of score tape. And I really messed up when I was putting this one together, and I ended up piecing some of the score tape. So I want you to see the result on that. You're better off to start with a brand new piece because first of all, it doesn't always join like it should. There's an example of it not joining like it should. And then the second thing you'll see when we put the foil on is that it leaves a bump where the score tape joined because it's hard to get an exact join. So you're either going to get a bump from the overlap or you're going to get a gap where it doesn't match on. So again, I'm going to take my foil, lay it over the top, and I'm just going to press it into the stripes. Not as hard this go around because I'm just dealing with the flat score tape. I don't have that embossing powder anymore to deal with. So I'm going to press that into those 3 skinny stripes. And pull it back up. Now you can see my join here. I didn't get it right, so that's my plea to you. Don't do what I did. Do the right thing and use the full strip of score tape. If you have spots like this where there's wrinkles or a little bit here at the end where it didn't seem to pick up the foil, go ahead and place foil over top. Go over it again and it should pick up and give you the desired finish. And there you go. I've got a little bit of stray foil hanging around here. I'm going to use my adhesive eraser a little bit later to just sort of erase that off. The other thing that I can do at this point, because I still have a little sticky that I feel on this, I'm going to take my powder tool and I'm just going to go over the top, and that's going to deactivate any remaining adhesive. So you will see that on this one, where we heated that foil, it's got a little bit different result than where we didn't have to heat the foil. You don't have to heat this foil to set it. It's set. It's on that adhesive and it's staying. But in these areas where we had the embossing powder and it did get heated, it changes just a little bit to kind of a hammered finish. Again, we'll clean up some of these things on the inside with that adhesive eraser and it'll look absolutely awesome. But a super simple technique, very, very easy to do. I just used my soft, this is just a cheap makeup brush, but very, very soft. That's what you want for glitters or embossing powders where you want to remove any last remaining here. So here's our sample card, where we started, where we finished. I would just add a quick sentiment to it. I kind of like the spacing on this better, although doing it again, I think I would move the skinny stripe up closer to the bigger stripe and just leave a bigger space between the groupings. But you can play around that and see. But you can see that's a really quick and easy card. What a fun technique using the scrapbook adhesive metallic foil transfer sheets and the WOW embossing powder opaque bright white ultra high embossing powder. So much fun. Thanks for watching. Bye.